this is just sort of the start, right? And then maybe Brian and I, we continue to collaborate on, from this, what specific topics, what things do we want to focus on? What have we learned, maybe based on your feedback, and additional ways we can give this group resources, right? And support to help you go down that path and maybe being just a little more comfortable stepping out of the tasks, right? Because everybody's really good at the task. Everyone's really good at the P number and what am I doing and the utilization and all those things that make us as a firm really strong. But then how do we, even if it's small steps, how do we have this group, not just the gentlemen in the room today, but those who hopefully post-spring break can watch the video. And then who knows, depending on the quality of this, we may be able to share this with some of the other groups and departments as well. And that's really the idea. For us to grow the firm, how do we all become revenue generators in some way, shape, or form? I have now spent 30-ish years, it's a long time, in sales and marketing roles or sales management roles and building sales teams. I think some of you know the bulk of my adult career has been in the advertising industry. So I have made literally thousands of presentations over the last 30 years. Some of the first sales jobs I ever had was selling office equipment. Coming to an office park like this, walking through the front door, going to the reception, introducing myself and trying to figure out who's the decision maker for your printers, copiers, and your equipment. That was freaking hard. But in that, I learned a lot of life lessons. And while I certainly don't proclaim to be an expert at anything, I think, and you know, Brian helped with this as well, there's just some tips and tricks and suggestions here that might have you look at the way you're interacting with clients and prospects and people you meet different. In fact, there may be even things that come out of this that affect the way you interact even with your own family and your loved ones and just the way you kind of communicate and think about those things. So, you know, this isn't how to be a swindler salesperson. That's not what this is at all. It's all about what are some of the tips, tricks, tools available that might get us to look at the world just a little different. So Brian kind of took first crack at sort of setting this presentation up. He's like, hey Scott, based on some of the things we've talked about, you know, I think this is a deck that we'd want to work off of. So Brian started with this notion of, hey, I'm Brian Kitchen, and with Scott's help, this is my plan to rule the world. The more I got into this, the more I realized what my role really is, and that's to make sure Brian doesn't hurt himself. That's my goal here, right? So let's jump into it. So business development, by its very definition, you go on your phones or laptops right now and you search business development definition. What is it? Frankly, it's just the act of pursuing strategic opportunities for a business, which is what we are, cultivating those partnerships and relationships and identifying new markets for our products and services, right? Anyway, by its very definition, that is what business development means. But practically speaking, like, where do we go from here? What does this mean for us, right? So, something that I've learned as I've stepped into the AEC world, I've spent 25 of my 30 years in the advertising industry, but then by a serendipitous relationship, came to EPS, got to know Brian Kitchen, at which point Brian Kitchen said, hey, you're a sales guy, Scott. Yeah, whole career. Would you want to do BD for us? And I literally said, what's BD? He's like, business development. I said, well, explain a little more. Remember that conversation? Yeah. He's like, yeah, so we've had BD people in the past, and while they were wonderful people, they were more marketing-minded folks, and you know, maybe we're out there trying to help represent the company, but they really weren't revenue generators. And that's when I said, oh, BD, you need a sales guy to help represent your company. He's like, bingo, that's it. And I've been on this journey with you all ever since then, right? And I still see it as a blessing at this point in my career to not only work with a great firm, but to be in a red hot development market, which Phoenix continues to be, and to be able to go out and represent you and all of our departments every day. So when we get into BD, where does it begin? Well, first of all, identifying our firm's skill sets, right? What are the services we provide? Most of them are on the wall right outside here. And then based on those skill sets, based on those abilities, who do we now go and pursue, right? And you all know it's the people we work with. Landowners, I spent a lot of time with land brokers, commercial real estate brokers, to a degree, architects, GCs, right? That ecosystem of early land development, that's where I try to spend my time. And for the most part, you all know that. While I haven't spent a lot of time in the field with necessarily John or Mikkel or Joey, most of the rest of you on various levels, we've done some BD activity together, and that's the world we live in, right? So if you take nothing else away from today, features are the services that we have. What are the features of EPS Group, right? They're right there on the board. And again, now with flood control and a few other things, we're expanding to a degree. But these are the features of the company. But what are the benefits, right? The difference between the feature and the benefit is all about me, the customer, right? And it's got to be our goal to always take that conversation and bring it to the benefit, the solution we provide. I'll give you an example or two. Every automobile produced in the last 50 plus years has power steering. What a great feature for a car to have, right? What's the benefit of power steering though? Something as simple and mundane as power steering. You've got a safer, smoother, more comfortable ride, right? That's about you, the consumer behind the wheel. I use that as an example, right? Power windows on a car. It's a wonderful feature to have. What's the benefit of that? Allows you to not have to crank down a window the old-fashioned way. Just by touching a button, it goes up or down. Talk about value proposition. That's something I always try to come back to. And again, some of you have heard me say that before. Get away from the services necessarily and focus on the solution, the benefit that we bring to a customer. If you have that benefit mindset, that by its very self will go a long, long way to help us. So we could role play, with any customer, any situation. Civil engineering is a great service that we have. It's a feature that we have. But what's the benefit to, say, a home builder? How do we benefit a home builder, Tino? What do you think?
Make the project feasible.
Right.
No flooding.
Hopefully. Right.
I mean, nowadays we do just about everything.
Yeah.
You get the project going
From soup to nuts, right, Joe?
finish, through construction, even like well into construction.
Yeah.
More and more we're being asked to do coordination with utility companies, and we do just about everything.
Right. And the very, very, very beginning of the cycle in terms of just feasibility.
Right.
We're going to be at Mattamy Homes next week talking about that early due diligence and feasibility. What a great benefit to our customers for us to be able to sit down and say, hey, here's a 100-acre parcel of land. We, a home builder, as an example, we'd love to develop this, but there's a whole bunch of things that we don't know. This land broker over here at Land Advisors or whatever it might be, they've come to us with the stack and they're pitching this and this is the price. That's all great, but how do we help add that benefit, right, to that client in this particular instance? So that's certainly a great example. And I'll always come back to it. Focus on the benefit or the solution. What solutions can we provide? And if you've got that value-minded mindset, it'll go a long, long, long way. So anyway, just sort of an overview, feature benefits, very sort of sales 101, but those principles certainly apply to us today and the things that we're doing. So one of the things I really want to spend some time on are examples of business development activities. There's several, and I may have even missed one or two, but in my mind, based on my experience over the last 4+ years at EPS Group, there's several things that we're all doing to various degrees that to me are business development activities. And I just want to kind of think those through and talk those through with you, because as much as you might be like, oh, BD, I don't know if it's for me, on some level, I think we're all doing a little bit of it right now. So one clear form of business development, and it's something, while I've been fortunate to not have to do a ton of, I do some on behalf of the company, and that's cold calling brand new prospects. That's the most uncomfortable thing, right? A complete stranger. Holy crap, what are we gonna do? You know, and that's, even for somebody that's been doing this as long as me, and I tend to be comfortable in most settings, even for me, there's always that moment of anxiety, right? Of like, ooh, how's this gonna go? I don't know the last thing about this person. I've seen them in an article and I know they're a developer, but how do we have that conversation? So that's like the highest level, right? Trying to introduce yourself to somebody brand new. Another example, handful of us today were at HBACA breakfast this morning. Brian and I were there along with a couple of other of our peers. That's a little bit easier. Still can maybe feel a little uncomfortable walking into a room of strangers, but yet I think we all walked away having introduced ourselves in this particular instance to Don, the division president at Mattamy Homes. He now is starting to put a face with a name. While he certainly isn't the one necessarily choosing his civils or surveyors or other consultants, for us to have that relationship, which I don't think Brian and I have ever had, certainly not with him as a DP, what a great person for us to get to know. And while we were there, networked and said hello to a few other folks. If you haven't noticed, it's not by accident, very intentionally. I try, particularly when I'm out in a public setting, I always try to wear something with EPS on it. I'm kind of a big boy, I stand out anyway, right? And whenever I have EPS, it's crazy how many times it just builds that natural connection of, one, who's EPS, what do you do? Or, hey, I know you guys. And then just sort of helps break that ice a little bit.
Scott has a tattoo appointment this coming weekend to get EPS.
yeah, tattooed at the top of my head.
Yes.
So anyway, to varying degrees, some of us have done industry networking events. Doesn't have to be weird, it doesn't have to be uncomfortable. It's always tougher when you go in alone. I really love the wingman, wing person model. Anytime you got a buddy to go with. And you guys know I drag Brian to a lot of this stuff because he's a very good representative of the company. But I'm not married to just Brian. Always happy to take other folks to go out, and it's always a lot nicer to have that crutch, to have somebody to lean on, somebody to kind of bounce things off of when you're going to introduce yourself to somebody new. So anyway, that's one way that we do business development, but there's some other maybe more subtle ways you haven't necessarily thought that much about. I'd say business development is connecting current industry contacts to one another. As I've settled into this role, that is where I spend a lot of my time. So, what does that mean by connecting industry contacts to one another? How often do we see a new developer who comes to town, not necessarily home building world, but you see it with commercial, you see it with some of the industrial folks, and they know they want to be in Arizona. Their company directive is, hey, we want to make some capital investment here, but they don't know where to begin, right? They maybe have talked to a CRE broker, they're looking at some land pieces, but now all of a sudden it's like, well, wait a minute. You're going to need an architect at some point. You're going to need a GC at some point. There's other folks in the development ecosystem that I might be able to connect you to. It's amazing, just that simple activity, how many times it comes back to us with additional opportunity or improved relationships. So that's another thing that we try to do, and I think we're all doing it to a certain degree, but maybe not consciously, right? How do we connect the folks that we're working with? How are we adding value to those clients in a unique way? Oftentimes it is by creating those contacts and making those introductions. So another way, improving personal connections with your current customers. Here's where every single one of us can get better. Every one of us. Brian's got a lot of pressure on you guys, even though he does it with a smile on his face, to make sure your utilization is up and you're staying as busy as you can. And that's okay. That's okay to be extremely good at the tasks that you're in. But what are you doing? What can you be doing to take a step back, right, from that P number you're buried in and the task that's in front of you, what are the things that you could be doing just to get to know that client a little bit better, to get to know them on a personal level, to ask them about their family, to ask them, do they have any vacation plans this summer, to ask them, hey, where are you originally from? So many of us are transplants in Arizona. Simple little questions like that, just to get to know people on more of a human level, might seem simple enough. I don't know, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. For me, it becomes second nature, just as a way to try to get to know somebody a little bit better. And I think as you get to know folks on a personal level, they become much more empathetic when things aren't always going well, right? If all you are is locked into the task at hand because, you know, Brian or some other boss has told you this is it, that's good. But take a step back and think about other ways that you can engage and get to know that client on a personal level. What part of the valley do you live in? Where'd you go to college? Oh, really? You're married too? That's interesting. How old are your kids? Whatever it might be. Those are unique little ways just to get people to get to know you. And if they get to know you, they're going to trust you. And if they trust you, odds are if things aren't always going so well, they're going to be a little more empathetic to you in the long run. Does that seem to make sense? Another thing that I've, particularly when I first came on board, really trying to expand client relations to multiple associates within a firm. You know, that became very clear as I came on board and I got to know Brian. Some of our clients, we might know that one person, that one key contact at ABC Development Company, right? But we know ABC Development Company, there's 10 more people just like the one that's your key contact. That's not always the case, but oftentimes it is, right? So what are we doing sometimes to take a step back from just that one-on-one key relationship you have to say, hey, who else in the firm could benefit from the things that we're doing? Who else is involved in this project? All by asking those type of questions. Those are other ways, subtle little ways that you can grow relationships and have some additional impact on business development on your own, right? Stepping back just from that direct relationship and trying to get to know other people at that builder, at that firm.
You can also spin it the other way around too. Mm-hmm. Multiple relationships internally with a client, trying to introduce more on the team.
Right.
That's always better. I know I believe anyway, it's the engineers makes more of the engineers. I think maybe knee-jerk reaction to hold clients and relationships close to the vest. Mm-hmm. I think you'll find the more you introduce them to your team, get them to know your team, it builds that much more of a relationship and a strength.
Good point. Very true. Very, very true. So I kind of already touched on this one a little bit with the notion of just trying to get to know your current customers better, but really trying to step beyond those current tasks and exploring new possibilities. It's amazing what just a simple question of what other projects are you involved in? Are there other ways that we can help you? We've got a full myriad of services at EPS Group. I know we're doing some feasibility through the lens of civil engineering, but do you need a survey? Do you need some land planning work? You know, we'd love to introduce you to our landscape architecture group if you need any theming or planning for your property. On and on and on, right? What are we doing to step beyond just the task in front of you and explore other opportunities with those clients? That is business development, right? And then something else that I'm working with marketing behind the scenes. We want to do another little training segment for the entire firm on the notion of social media. And we're no different than a lot of other firms. We're lost in the day-to-day tasks of what we're doing. But we'd love to get to the point where all of us are just a little bit more active. If on no other platform, just LinkedIn. I would love to get to the point where every single one of you, when you fire up your computer every single day and you pull up all of the things that you need to begin your day, to also open up a tab for LinkedIn. I really, really would like to see us get to that point. And once, twice, 3 times throughout the day, click on the LinkedIn tab, hit the refresh button, and then based on industry colleagues, friends that you know or follow, other businesses that you're following, competitors that perhaps competitors of EPS you're following, just seeing what else is going on out there. And I gotta tell you, to me, while it's a very passive business development tool, simply liking, commenting, or sharing some of the content that's out there are things that you can be doing that not only help maybe elevate EPS's brand in the market just a little bit, but also you individually as well. So again, more on that maybe in the upcoming weeks. But LinkedIn is where the AEC industry lives. You know, Instagram and Facebook and some of those other things are real, and they're certainly tools that are being used. But LinkedIn, I can tell you, it's where it's at for our world. As a guy who spent all these years in the advertising industry, who's now completely out of that, and in the AEC industry, I've actually completely purged a lot of my LinkedIn contacts. So many of these folks were like advertising agency people in New York City and LA and Chicago, the world I used to be in. No offense, I'll never see these people again in my life. At this point in my career and my age, I'm not going back to the advertising industry. While I hope EPS is my final resting spot, even if it isn't, I'm staying in Arizona, I'm staying in the AEC world. I'm building networks within the verticals that we serve. So I say that because over the last couple of years, I now follow probably 200-ish companies, builders, architects, every one of our key competitors I follow on social media. Trade organizations, Pennell Partnership, East Valley Partnership, Westmark, all of these other groups, several other very centric civil survey groups as well. I follow those organizations and companies to see what they're posting about, to see what they're talking about. I will tell you, I'm not liking or commenting on any of our key competitors' stuff, but I'm paying attention. But when it's one of our clients that also works maybe with another competitor and they're at an event or doing something together, I'll stick my nose in there. I'll say, hey, it looks like you had a great time, or whatever the case might be. Doing those little things, and again, it's my hope that we can get this firm to a point where logging into LinkedIn every single day is just part of what you do. Over time, you start to follow some of the other trade organizations and things like that. And again, can be literally a minute or 2 or 3 a day. That's it. Refresh your feed, scroll through it for a minute or 2 before you jump into a next task. Simple like, comment, or share are little things that are business development tools and activities that can help us. This may seem completely foreign to you or a bit of a stretch, but it's an easy way to stay connected and kind of have your ear to the ground with some of the things that are happening in this market that maybe otherwise you didn't know about. So, thoughts, comments, do you guys think I missed anything? Are there other little ways, nuances we can be business developers other than just, cold calling new businesses out of the blue? Are there any other things that come to mind? Because I think this is probably most of them.
So Scott, one thing.
What do you think, Brian?
One thing that sticks in my mind is I find myself in a lot of projects where we introduce to a new architect, we introduce to a new partner, a capital partner, an extra, someone else around the project, and I've seen a lot of success searching for kind of new clients and new work and new items within existing, like neighbors, and like a lot of it we're touching on a regular basis. It's not all just cold calls, right? It's being very, very intentionally looking for opportunities in your projects, looking for neighbors, looking for, like I did one this morning on our equity partner guys that I met with JJ at Verdi, who now are working with Ascent and Marana, who are now calling me directly saying, hey, a new project. Like, it's watching for those connections to happen, and a lot of those will kind of spin off of current projects.
Right. Those are great examples, right? There's a lot of capital folks too, right? They love the market, they love the industries or the sector that they want to be in, but they don't necessarily know where to go. And having a good name and reputation and being a referral from somebody is one thing, but now how do you harness that and try to just pay it forward? those are the ways, those are simple little things that we can do. Those are business development activities. You plant that seed today, right, and it just might grow and bear fruit. Some do, some don't. But if you're not planting the seed, how do you know, right? And that's another great example, Brian. Appreciate you sharing that. Anything else come to mind with other little ways we can be connecting with the industries we serve?
I think it's important. One thing I've tried to do is when I meet someone new, then I immediately look them up on LinkedIn and send a request to them, while it's still fresh in everybody's mind.
Right.
And that is just a good way to keep connected, and then you get their feed of what they're doing and where they're at. So
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, I can't emphasize it enough. I'm assuming on some level, you're all on LinkedIn, on some level, you've got a LinkedIn page, whatever. Hopefully you're all following the company you work for. Hopefully you're all finding time to like, comment, or share the company you work for's posts. Now you don't have to do it all. I mean, I don't even do them all. But paying attention to what's going on in the industry, and again, LinkedIn is where it's at. It just is. Instagram and this other stuff, people use them. But for the professional industries we serve, that's where it's at. I've helped Ryan, did it maybe a month or so ago. One day I sat in his office, I had my LinkedIn open on my laptop, and I'm just going through the 100+ companies, trade organizations, things that I follow. And I now, for him, I just did it for him, right? Now, I guarantee you, your LinkedIn feed today, when you go to LinkedIn and hit the refresh, it looks different than it did a month ago. Maybe not drastically, but you're now seeing more of the things that are happening in this market. And for me, especially with this guy, and hopefully all of you, but certainly with Brian, for me, I hope that rings bells in his head to say, crap, I just saw this, Scott. Will you go after this? Or will you set a meeting up with that? Or I see a competitor of ours just started on this project down in Queen Creek. That reminds me, we should go after this project. He and I do a lot of that sort of hamming and egging back and forth. And I invite all of you to try to be just even a little bit more of an active participant from that perspective.
Point, if you have it up, even if, I suggest you put it on a scroll, you guys have 2 screens. Put it even if it's just a quarter of one of your 2 screens. Have it there, it's just something you can just see periodically during the day, and you'd be surprised how it really starts to connect dots, and then something will come up where you're like, and I suggest this too, about from a business development standpoint, you guys are all extremely busy, as I am too, but sometimes you'll get a thought, and if you just send that thought to Scott, Scott can run that thought. It may not end up anywhere, you may turn it over and not find anything, but you'd be surprised at what you can't find. And then suddenly you're sitting in a meeting doing business development with Scott with an individual that was your thought.
Right.
That's the intent of LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I would like us to get more involved.
Yeah, and it's a little ambiguous. It's hard to measure, right? Subjective, objective. Subjective things are kind of like, well, is it working? Is it not working? Objective is very clear, right? We know we take these steps. We start here, we end here. It's measurable. It's done. A lot of these things tend to be a little more subjective. But I go back to the notion of being farmers, right? Of planting those seeds. And the more seeds we get in the ground, and the more that collectively, not just me, not just Brian, all of us try to water those seeds and till that garden and look after it, right? Now Joe's all LinkedIn up. Look at this guy go. He's focused. He's like, what am I missing? Like, Scott's old. Like, Scott's right. Holy crap. LinkedIn, look at what's going on. But no, the more that we can plant and nourish and grow those seeds, you never ever know what comes of it. You just don't know. And if you're doing it in a kind, sincere, genuine way, it's crazy. It comes back to us. The universe is a crazy thing, and it comes back to us time and time again. I don't beg for work for you guys very often. I really don't. I just try to make connections to the right people, try to take whatever services we can to help them along, connect them to the universe here, particularly in Arizona. That's where 98% of our business is, and it comes back time and time and time again. But back to Brian's point, it's not a popularity contest either. I use it as a lead source. I use it as a tool, right? And I'm always looking to advance the conversation so long as I think there's opportunity knocking, right? Every seed you plant, every connection you make, every person you talk to might fizzle out, may not go anywhere. We all get busy, even I get busy, and this is all I'm doing. And I'm like, oh crap, I need you guys to remind me from time to time. But I'm always trying to stay focused on, is this a relationship worth developing? Because at the end of the day, there's a chance it'll bring revenue through the door, right?
If I could though, just really quick, going back to what Brian was saying too, I think that is a very good point, Brian. A lot of you guys work on projects, and your clients that you're working with are working on multiple projects you don't even know about. And just connecting those dots, asking what they're working on. You know, someone else will come on the project that's tied to something else. It's amazing how quickly you can follow dots to different work.
Right. Yeah, it's cool. It's very cool.
Just got one more quick.
Yeah.
You mentioned about expanding your relationships and clients. It is amazing how many times people leave, move, get fired, promoted, and like how much work will spin off of a clean contact going somewhere else. And now
Thank you.
You know number two's number one now, but number one's over here, and you're like, yeah, it's important it's important to expand because things just move and shake there.
It's a great, that is a great life lesson. I've seen it in my career, not at EPS. I've kind of been in this one lane the whole time, but over the last preceding 25 years, I'm telling you, you see the same people on your way up the ladder as you do on the way down, right? And if you're at least neutral, if you can at least be neutral and have some positive interaction or relationship with those people, the odds of it coming back to you in a positive way, because sometimes we come down the ladder, it isn't always going up, right? You know, it happens, right? That is absolutely, you know, we saw it recently, and I don't know, maybe these home builders are still in flux, but we know several of the home builders, particularly the bigger ones, they've had some layoffs, right? I've gone out of my way when I've seen somebody who's no longer at a builder, who's now on the sideline, to say, hey, how can I help you? Is there any way I can make some contacts for you? Is there anything I can do for you? I can name several of them. I'm not going to do it because we're taping this. There's been numerous that have been shown the street in the last couple of months saying, hey man, I know I don't know you all that well, but if I can do anything to help, please, please let me know. With the hope that someday they land on their feet and now they're going to be like, gosh, Scott, Brian, and the rest of the folks at EPS, you went out of your way to make the best of this for me. Yeah, you know what? I do want to entertain a proposal from you, right? That's the idea.
There's no better loyalty.
No, that's for sure. So anyway, in life, right? I don't care if it's with your spouses, your boyfriends, your girlfriends, your children, your coworkers, your neighbors, the folks at your church. It doesn't matter. Every interaction that we have as humans creates a reaction, even if it's subconscious. Every reaction is like, yes, that was a good interaction, or it's like, okay, it's not what I wanted to hear from Joe, but at least he got back to me, at least he handled it, you know, at least he did the best he could. My whole thing is, how do we take every interaction and just remind ourselves that every single one is meaningful? Every one. Could be a quick text to a client, quick phone call, could be a Teams call, could be a, you know, as I like to call it, you know, a sighting in the wild. I've been known, and you guys as well on some level, on a Saturday afternoon, running a trip to Home Depot, you bump into somebody from the industry you know. It's starting to happen to me more and more, right? Just out of the blue, you see folks, and what are you doing just to try to make that a positive interaction and a positive way to help build your personal brand as well as EPS.
And the interaction isn't always in a good setting, by the way.
No.
Sometimes it's how you react in a very difficult
character. It's great when it's all sunshine and rosy and everyone's feeling good. What happens when the plans are busted, right?
Yep.
How do we react to that? Those are the things that are great differentiators. So anyway, adding and detracting value. Are you leading a positive or negative direction, and are you adding value? You know, a lot of people, a lot of folks that you see in, you know, business development and just business in general, right? A lot of folks talk about success. How do we become successful, right? if I handed each one of you a blank sheet of paper and a pen and said, all right, write down your definition of success, we would get all kinds of, every one of you would probably have a different answer on what success is. Success to you could mean financial stability. Success to you could mean a strong relationship with your loved ones, right? Success can mean all kinds of things. But in the aspect of work, take a step back from the notion of I want to be successful. Focus on adding value, right? If I'm adding value to the relationship, both internal and external, it's something I focus on. I want Brian Kitchen and the other owners of this company to always see Scott Elliott walk through the hallway and be like, value. I want them to see dollar signs on my head. That's a guy who's adding value to the organization and we're glad he's here. The day that doesn't happen is the day I'm probably in trouble. So far, I think they see value as being, continuing to be added. But even through your roles and the lens that you're at, what are you doing to create value with the client? What are you doing to create value within the organization, right? Success will come, however you want to define it, but if you're adding value, great things can happen. And again, you heard me talk about this earlier, just proactively approach these interactions and be a solution provider. A lot of features of the company. What are the benefits? How are we benefiting these clients that we're working with, right? Can I get an amen? No, I'm just kidding. So,
I didn't know it was a kind of a meeting.
yeah, no. This is the LD meeting. Not to be confused with the LDS meeting. That's something completely different. Just kidding.
The amen's gonna save till the end.
Right, till the very end. I'll pass the plate around too. Maybe you guys give me a little weekend bonus.
Say something different.
Relationships. People do business with the folks they like and people they trust, right? Other little tips, tricks, things like that. Anybody ever hear the saying, God gave you one mouth and two ears? My grandma used to say it. What does that mean? If you can go through your interactions with your clients trying to listen twice as much as you're talking, and you're making it about them, and you're asking inquisitive questions about them, both personally and professionally, to get them to open up, it's weird how the universe works. Do more listening than talking, if you can.
Well, with that, one thing I found is, especially when you're trying to bridge that gap, sometimes you have to kind of prime the bucket a little bit, and
Right.
when told, that's what I had to do. It's like I talk about myself a little bit to get you have to kind of open up that personal one in order to open up that one too.
Right. Right. Yeah, no, I don't disagree. There's sometimes that you've got, especially if people are a little more quiet or introverted sometimes, you got to be the one to kind of pull it out of them. But there's ways to do that, right? There's things we can be doing, and I'm going to touch on some of those coming up here in a second. But you're absolutely right, James. Try to make it about them, right? Whenever you can, try to make it about them. Yes, they're going to be interested in you. Your professional accreditations, right? The amount of time you've had in the industry. Tell me some of the projects you've worked on. Help me get comfortable with you, knowing you might work on my project. That's great, but the more you can over time shift that conversation to them, their needs, their pain points, what worked, what hasn't worked, what have they liked about engineers they worked with in the past, give me examples of things that have gone well or not well, and how can I best serve you? Asking those type of questions go a long, long, long way. Making it about them, because the minute you get them talking, now all of a sudden it's like the sound of their own voice is a beautiful thing sometimes, and let them go. Because if they're talking, it's probably going well.
And sometimes
right?
you don't ever have to talk again.
That's it. That's exactly it. Pre-call preparation is something that is huge with me. Huge, huge, huge. And I think we as a firm need to do a much better job at it. Pre-call preparation. We get so busy. And maybe things have retracted with the economy a little bit and we've got a little more room to breathe. But I've got access to pretty much every one of your calendars. And it's back to back to back to back to back some days. And I'm going to encourage you to really focus on the 6 Ps.
Don't push the button yet.
Yeah?
Anybody know what 6 Ps is?
Anybody know what the 6 Ps are? No one knows. If Ox was here, he would know.
Prepare.
That's got some negative in it.
Yeah. I would tell you, if Ox watches this later, because I know he's out this week, he will be saying it out loud to himself, because it's a Marine Corps saying. My dad was a Marine, so I certainly had my fair share of that culturally growing up. Proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. It's that simple. And when I talk about pre-call preparation, whether it's the next task in front of you, before you jump in, I know we get busy, but before you jump onto that Teams link, before you throw yourself into it, you're scrambling, trying to find the file with the information based on the updates of what we did last, try to just catch your breath. Take a minute, or 2 or 3 or 5 if you can, and get your thoughts organized. It'll be such a better meeting. And that's just the day-to-day tasks that you folks are going after now and things you're working on now. But in a new relationship, a new meeting, whether you're doing it on your own or you've asked me to help set something up, and let's go meet Bob at ABC Construction, taking that just couple of minutes, hopping on LinkedIn, doing a search on their firm, understanding the type of sectors they serve and the work that they do and the projects they're on and the structure of their company. A little pre-call preparation, just a little, even if it's off your phone in the parking lot before you walk into a building, goes a long, long way to have a much more educated, intelligent conversation. So think about it. Think about just a little bit more preparation from time to time with the calls that you're making. I tie it all back to business development, relationship nurturing, and trying to grow and improve those relationships.
Unless they have LinkedIn Premium and they see you,
Creeper,
Scott, you just saw your page.
Creeper,
He's in the parking lot.
LinkedIn Creeper. All right. Hey, they're doing it too. Guarantee you, they want to know. People want to know who are they working with. And with the technology that we've got in the palm of our hands, I like to know who's walking into the room. At least a little bit, right? Another very sort of salesy, just sales 101. In this world, there are open-ended questions and there are closed-ended questions. How old are you is a closed-ended question. Real simple, I'm X. Or a closed-ended question elicits a simple yes or no. Open-ended questions, and I know this seems very elementary, but I think it's worth touching on. Who, what, where, when, and why. Maybe you learned about this in high school or even in college. If you ever had a journalism class, it's what reporters do, right? Who, what, where, when, and why. If all else fails you and your mind is completely blanked, think about some of those basic open-ended questions that can get somebody talking, right? It can be personal, right? Where'd you grow up? What was it like there? Where'd you vacation last? You get into all that kind of stuff. But then the who, what, where, when, and why of their project, of their firm. Who all works at this firm? What are the key practices, development practices you guys have? When did you first come to Arizona? Think about that. Open-ended questions. I know it's very basic, but it's a great, great tool. If all else fails, to fall back on. To do what? To get them talking about themselves. Nonverbal language is something that could be a whole nother class. We could get into that for a long, long time. But has anyone ever heard that like 80 or 90% of all communication's nonverbal? If you've heard that before, do you believe it?
Oh, yeah.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. And again, this could be a whole nother class. I don't claim to be an expert in anything in this world. Maybe I've already said that once. But nonverbal body language is something I think in my career I've gotten very, very good at, is to be able to read a room, to know when it's time to get the hell out, to know when it's time to shut up, or to know when it's time to double down and let's keep the conversation going. There's some great YouTube tutorials out there. There's some great books that talk about nonverbal body language. It is 80 or 90% of the way we communicate with one another. I can tell you, on one end of the spectrum, Brian's got nonverbal body language for the most part very well figured out. What's the guy do all the time? He's doing it right now. You see it? What's he doing? Smiling. When in doubt, even as crappy as the situation might be, this guy has got a great, and I say it sincerely, he does a great job of when in doubt, just keep smiling, we're gonna ride through the storm, and we're gonna figure it out, right? Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't.
There's no other alternative.
But keep smiling, because if you don't laugh, you just might cry, and I'd rather see him laugh. But I pick up on that stuff all the time. Nonverbal body language is something that if you can kind of become even a little bit of a student of, I think it's something that would help you over time. I'll pick on John for a second, only because we haven't done a lot of BD stuff together, and of this whole group, you're one of the ones probably know me the least. I can tell you, and it's not a negative comment, it's just an observation. When I talk about BD with you sometimes, based on your body language, you're kind of like, you seem just a little unsure. But that's okay, that's okay. It's not a bad thing. There's just times where it's just like, yeah, Scott might be full of crap, I'm not sure. He just might be, I sense it. And I can tell you, another guy used to be that way, I'll pick on him again, is Joe. When I first started pulling Joe into BD, it was like, oh shit, like where is this going? Now, I've done a lot of stuff with Joe over the last 3 years, right? And now Joe's like, we're gonna have at it, Scott, right?
Yeah.
By and large, I certainly need you there from a technical perspective, and you know, you're the person in the weeds on projects. But I can tell you, when you and I first started stepping into some of the things that we were doing, you were very uncomfortable at times. It was just uneasy, and you didn't know where it was going. Now you're like, yeah, Scott, you can be my wingman anytime. Am I wrong?
No, yeah, that's right.
I mean, it's kind of worked out, right? And we go out and we have fun, and you know, we're always trying to bring more revenue through the door, but now we work much better together. And you, and I've said it to you directly to you, I've said it to you in front of Brian, and I'll say it in front of this group. Of all the EPS, SPMs on the land dev team, you're one that I think I've seen some of the greatest growth with. Just in terms of your confidence, to be able to go out and share your story and ask for business and execute. And if you don't know it, instead of clamming up, you know, you kind of own it and you move on, which is cool. It's been fun to watch. So anyway, I just use those as two.
What are you guys' thoughts, you know, since we went into COVID, now there's a lot of virtual meetings. Do you guys stare, do you look at the camera? Do you look at the people?
Yeah.
Or not? Do you think that's important?
I know my answer.
What's your answer?
I try to look into my camera. Now, we're all looking at the screens because we're in the task, right? And you're following whatever plans are up and doing what you do. But if you can consciously, and even though their face is in the box down here on your screen, if you can look into your camera, like you're looking into the eyes of the person you love the most. Well, maybe not quite at that level. That goes a long way, right?
I mean,
Now
that
you're
client-
connecting to
I would
them.
have a
I
client
put my
comment.
email.
It's like, wow, it looks like you're looking right at me.
I am,
If you're looking at the
Oh,
camera, you
yeah.
are, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I think this is crazy important. We should spend time and effort setting our systems up so we can do that effectively.
Right.
But like, I was on a phone call with a client recently where he had privately, where he was just blowing up angry at another consultant because it was bad presentation. But it was remarkable how much he keyed into the fact that his camera was over here and he was staring over here. And I always saw the side of his head the entire time. He's like, he wouldn't even look at me. He wouldn't even look at me.
Right.
And he was just angry in general, but
Yeah.
like, it was amazing how that mattered so much in the conversation.
It's, I'm glad you guys touched on this because that is, it's the world, especially the world we live in now, right? COVID hit, March 2020, the world changes, we all go to our corners. That awkward moment of when COVID first hit and Joe's kids, or I keep picking on you, it's only because I love you. Joe's kids keep running over the desk in his house and Joe's just like, somebody kill me. This has to end, right? But then it got to the point of, well, hey, if the doorbell rings or the dog barks or, you know, Brandon's wife is in her pajamas and walks past the camera, we got past all of it and we just owned it. We own it, right? We just owned it and life went on. But you're right, in the technology that we've got today, stare at that tiny little camera as much as you can. It makes a difference. I believe it does.
Yeah, and having decent audio. I
Correct.
can't hear you and you're scratchy and you're breaking up.
That's most special.
Really, really hard to appreciate somebody connect when the audio was bad.
Yeah, 100%. So the back half of the presentation, I think I'll go through fairly quickly, but some of the higher level things I wanted to touch on. So, but always remember, building these relationships, building friendships. I think we've all, on some level, have built genuine friendships with some of the clients we have, or maybe they're prospects, and someday we'd love for them to be clients. Friendship is great, but that ain't paying the bills, right? We've got to continue to try to move those conversations and get comfortable with the notion of asking folks for work. Not in a cheesy sales way, but in a professional, consultative way, because as Brian Kitchen always says, they need us, they need our service, right? Is it going to be us, or is it going to be one of our competitors? They're going somewhere, because somebody has to take the hair off the dog.
It's not like you're at a door selling Amway knives
Right.
that you don't need. You're selling them something they have to use.
Right.
It's a matter of who are they gonna use.
And maybe not today, they may not need it today, but at some point they will, right? So always remember, friendship's great, we all have them. That doesn't pay the bills. You've got to show me the money, right? And that's where it gets a little uncomfortable. But as they say in Hollywood, it's not show friendship, it's show business, right? And we are a for-profit organization, and it's okay to be a little uncomfortable asking people for work. But one, they need it anyway. And two, we are a professional service. It's all right to ask them for work. They're gotta go somewhere anyway. Now, right? If we want to negotiate price and they're comparing two proposals and all that stuff, that's great. But it's all right. Whether it's 10 grand, whether it's 100 grand, whether it's a large master plan community, it's $1.5 million, $2 million budget. They need that work to happen, and they need professionals like us to do it. So while it might seem uncomfortable, it's just a number. Ask.
It sounds a little disingenuous too. I'm not saying to lose a friendship, but if you get into a friendship with the intent of getting work and you find out that you can't get work from that friendship, I'm not asking you to kill a friendship, but at that point no longer is it a business friendship.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a friendship.
Yeah.
And if you want to move that to the side and keep
Yeah.
a personal relationship, great, but you've got to move on. You've got to find that individual that is going to give you work.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. I'll give you a perfect example. Not going to name names. This is being recorded. But Brian, Joe, Josh Cannon, and I were at an event yesterday. And at that event was one of the very top home builders in this market. Folks that, frankly, we would love to be doing millions of dollars of business with, but we don't. You can probably figure out who one of those top 2, 3, 4 builders are, but we were in their presence. And while we've gotten to know them, and we are more than happy to say hello to them and visit for a little bit, my time's too valuable. Life is short. I'm happy to know you. I want to at least stay neutral and positive, but I'm done chasing them. There's enough other work out there and enough other things that we can be doing that I'd rather direct that energy, time, and our money in other places. It's okay. It's all right to say no sometimes too, right? Sometimes if it's not going to work, we need to move on. A couple more slides. So what does this all come down to? Who can finish this sentence? If you don't ask,
You don't receive?
close enough.
You don't get-
If you don't ask, you don't get. Right? We all, most of us have kids, right? Most of us have kids. Kids are the most resilient human species ever. Kids will ask anything. Right? There's, we become adults and we've come up with these weird boundaries in our heads, and it feels awkward. Kids will ask you anything.
They'll just
Right?
keep asking.
And they'll keep asking. And they'll poke and poke and poke. Dad, you got 20 bucks? Dad, I want to go out, Dad. And it's like, go, get out of my hair. But I know, at least I think I know with most of you, the notion of asking for something you want is something you've all had success with. Most of you have, at least anyway. You want to know why? You've asked for something and received it because most of you are married. You asked for it, right? And we're going to wrap this thing up. There's a few things that have never, ever, ever happened. ever happened in this world, and I promise they're never gonna happen to you. So I wanna build confidence in the ability to go out and ask for business. A client has never fired a project manager because they simply asked, are there other ways we can help you? I'm lost in this task, I'm busy on this project, maybe it's going well, maybe it's not going well. But let me ask you, Brandon, are there any other ways I could help you? Are there other things that are going on in life, other resources I could deploy to make your life just a little bit easier? I'd love to help you if I can. No one's ever been shown the door and said, get the hell out of here. How dare you? How dare you have the audacity to ask me, are there other ways you can help? Right? And that four-letter word, HELP, is a powerful, powerful word. I think we as humans, human nature, while there's bad people in the world, human nature is we do on some level want to help one another. And it's a sales technique I've been using for a long, long time, particularly in the olden days when I'm cold calling businesses. Hey, real quick, ma'am, I was hoping you could help me. Could you help me? Just real quick, I've got a quick question. Who's your office manager that makes decisions on the office equipment here? If you could help me, I'd really appreciate it. Hey, thanks for your help. You've really been helpful today. That one simple word with most humans goes a long, long way. No one's ever been fired because of that, right? A prospect has never hung up on a civil engineer because they just simply said, hey, I'd be grateful for the opportunity to earn more of your business. Is that gonna get you fired? Probably not, right? Just by asking. You know, has a developer ever severed a relationship with someone because you simply said, would you consider using EPS Group on your next project? Would you consider us at least? If the answer is no, or you've got some concern, let's talk about it. You know, did you have a bad experience? Do you just not know that much about us? Maybe you're not clicking with the PM and we've got to assign somebody else, but man, we'd be grateful just for the chance to propose on your next project. Would you consider it? I ask all the time, to the point where maybe even Brian's like, all right, Scott, enough's enough. But those are just some of the simple little tricks that I wanted to share. Questions, comments, any other dialogue around this that you guys want to share? James, what do you think?
Yeah, kind of with asking the client for more work, and you know, kind of how you can help them out. One thing that Rich was taught me when we were kind of going through all of our stuff is never tell your client how busy you are. Always make it sound like, so, because you get in your thing, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so busy, and then you're like, oh, can I? Is there anything I can help you with? They're like,
Yeah.
wait, you're too busy. I'm not going to give you any more work. So that's the other one, is that kind of like lining up like you're always open. You're never too busy.
Yeah, no, that is a very, very smart positioning technique. What I would call sort of a positioning technique for you personally and us as a firm. You know, even when we were slammed, couldn't come up for air 6 months, a year ago, 2001, 2002, always happy to have the conversation. What do you got going on? Are you guys busy? All these other firms, they seem swamped. Yeah, we've got a lot going on, but let me tell you, we've really done a great job of staffing up through the COVID period. Mm-hmm. In fact, we've gone from, 200 associates to now over 300. Were they all the greatest hires? You know, in retrospect, was it perfect? They don't know. But you know what? We've reacted to the market, right? As a matter of fact, maybe you've seen some of our social media work your way. We've got several employees that are tied to Mesa teams. They don't even live in the valley, right? And that's smart. That's very, very smart. Yeah, you don't ever want to be like, oh my gosh, we're drowning over here. Can I have more business?
Yeah.
You know, you got to find that balance, right? That's a very good point.
You touched on this, that wearing your EPS to events, it worked out from the very beginning. So met with some power engineers and SRP people that led into, I cannot get any return. Nobody returns my calls. I'm like, how can I help you? So that turned into a survey contract, that turned into a civil contract, that turned into more and more work. Because not the problem. So.
All for a $25, $30 golf show, Right.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
You want me to buy you more swag?
Yeah.
We all.
We used to have a bunch and they dried up.
Yeah, right. You accidentally included me on the message.
Dang it. I think the only shirts we have left are those really ugly ones from like 5 years ago that
Yeah.
no one wants
Yeah,
to take.
yeah,
Those
yeah,
gray
yeah.
and black.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So that
know.
one was the strike?
I don't wear EPS swag every single day, but I pretty much do. If I'm gonna be out in public, if I'm gonna be grabbing lunch with a client or meeting to go do this, that, or the other, I always try to wear it. And people all the time, hey, you work for EPS Group? I said, yeah, as a matter of fact, I do. What's your name? You know, have you worked with us before? Ha ha ha, I hope it went well. Sometimes I'll joke around, you know. But yeah, it's amazing. Just, you know, and then for me, just, I don't know, certain presence. I'm a big dude, you know, I'm happy to have a conversation, tend to be a little loud. You know, it doesn't take a lot. All of a sudden eyes are locked. I'm like, who's that guy? Oh, I'm with EPS, nice to meet you. So I'm not saying you gotta wear EPS swag everywhere you go, but I can tell you for me, it's helped many, many times just to break the ice, to get a conversation moving. So I think it's money well spent.
What's that?
My socks.
What's that?
Did the knee high with shorts, then it's really noticeable.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
EPS socks.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's perfect. Along with your EPS boxers, hopefully no one's seeing those either. Yeah.
Only on LinkedIn.
There you go. I hope everybody took away, at least a couple little nuggets today. Just some things that maybe you hadn't thought about before, that maybe you can apply not only in your professional life, but maybe in your personal life, in relationships and communication skills. We're not sleazy sales guys, Brian and I, out there trying to dupe people into something they don't need. It's not it at all. We try to go out in a very genuine way, identify opportunities. What are the features and the benefits? What benefits can we provide them? We have an opportunity to work with somebody in the future. That's it. And it's a lot of prospects out there. So while we may go back to the same ones and eventually beg for work, there's so much opportunity out there. We just keep planting those seeds and hopefully good things happen. So.
How many of you feel like you do BD on a regular basis?
At least a little bit. Yeah.
What's the little bit that you do?
Over the shirt.
One shirt.
Wear the shirt?
I always ask clients when I meet with them, you know, they have other things. Every meeting that I,
Really, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't even have to do it as like,
Yeah.
I'm drilling down, it's like, hey, so what do you guys have going, what other
Yeah.
projects do you have? Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
more of that small talk before meetings
Yeah.
that's really effective.
So John, you kind of said, sort of like, what do you think? What do you think?
Kind of asking occasionally, you know, what else is coming up. I'm not active on LinkedIn as far as like posting to socials and stuff, but I do try to keep my eyes open on all the connections that I have, and when people become available, or if I just happen to know people aren't exactly happy where they're at, I try to say, why don't you come here instead?
Yeah. And I'll give you a lot of credit. You've been a great recruiter for EPS Group, right?
Yeah.
You've definitely made several introductions and contacts, and it's a wonderful contribution, for sure. Did I just see, and I missed it earlier, were there a couple of hands up?
Yeah.
Folks that had other comments or
Little
questions,
chat.
maybe Justin, Chris? Just want to make sure I'm kind of locked in with everybody that's joining remotely too.
Oh, no, I was just responding to your BD daily questions, you know, same thing that everyone else said, you know, interacting with clients or in seeing if they have anything new that's coming up that we could propose on or work with them on.
Right. That's good. Justin,
Yeah.
what do you think?
Scott, I just hit the raise hand button a couple of times. I shared on the chat a couple of other BD ideas. I thought yours were really good. You know, with our flood control work, a lot of it is public sector projects, and so getting our name out, our reputation out as experts, you know, it's qualifications based on every single pursuit and up against a lot of competition. And so making sure those clients know who you are, opportunities to be alongside of them on, public service types events, or getting on committees where you can kind of work shoulder to shoulder with them. And then definitely opportunities to showcase your experience, whether project bios or white papers or technical presentations. We're getting ready to do a technical presentation at the next AFMA conference in May, so things like that.
Right, yeah, and I certainly recognize that the mechanics of human nature and relationships are the same, public works, private land development, but the rules with dealing with public officials are, a little bit different. You need to be a little more careful, but you're right, Justin, I've learned a lot even from you over the last year with some of the tools, tips, tricks of trying to earn and build credibility in the public works realm, and you just named 3 or 4 of them, which is good. But at the end of the day, people do business with people they know, people they trust. And no different than, with Greg and Matt and Bruce and those guys over there. They may not be able to go out and have a nice lunch. It may just have to be a in-person meeting at, a public works municipal engineer's office. But to at least sit down and have that conversation and begin to build a relationship, it wins work. It wins work all the time. So I appreciate that feedback. Thank you.
How many of you feel uncomfortable doing business public, which is totally fine? No? Nobody? Sort of?
Sort of, yeah.
What's the hesitation, just lack of experience in doing it, or?
That was my position in the company.
So we just gotta give you
give me your job.
You're good.
He's too busy, you got too much work. That's the hard part.
Yeah. It's bringing the work in, yeah. I'm busy, so I can't manage it myself. And if we try to, then what shunts off and where it goes. So then it goes up and over to Joe, or it goes to someone else. So, I know everybody here is good, then it's just making those connections of other associates in the firm at the same time.
Gotcha. Okay, that's fair.
There are certain things in BD that I think are easier than others. One thing I hate is I absolutely hate going into a room of 500 people and just
most engineers feel that way.
Winging it.
Yeah, exactly. I hate that. Like roads and streets was something I did with when I was doing transport. Oh, I hated roads and streets. Just absolutely hated that.
Yeah.
Well, you're not alone. I'm the same way. To be completely honest.
Yeah.
I have to go in. I have to do one of those deep breaths and.
Here we go.
Try to always go. If you can, always try to do those things with a fellow associate. Having a wingman or a wing gal is the way to go.
Yes.
It just is. It just makes it so much easier. And it doesn't have to be 500 people. It could be a group of strangers of 25 people.
I think you want to do that every time, because going in, like using the Walton, their little thing yesterday. I got there probably 15 minutes before you did. I don't think we knew 98% of the people in that event.
A lot of our Walton employees and stuff like that we don't do work with. But
and so I'm standing there alone, I'm trying to say hi to the 3 guys I know. But it helps when Scott comes in the door and you guys, someone to talk to, and then that kind of attracts people to you. And it's like, oh, there's a group. Let's go talk.
Right.
Scott, I wanted to just throw out props to you and Samantha for all the work you do on LinkedIn and the various different EPS group posts. I think us liking those, sharing those, and sharing ideas for new posts is a big thing. One of the things that I really like watching, I follow other companies, other competition, to see what kind of posts they have. And the most interesting ones to me are their project bios, where they show post-construction or other content, and standing there next to the client and showing a job well done and having client quotes. Client quotes are another great way to tell others about what your clients think of you. So keeping track of some of those things, but I just wanted to say thank you and good job to you and Samantha on all that work.
Thanks, appreciate it. It's a work in progress, but we're trying. We try every day, every week, just to make small strides forward. And again, I'm Katie Harris, who you've gotten to know. Behind the scenes, we really do want to have just a little LinkedIn tutorial. Part 1 is how to improve your personal LinkedIn bio and page. So when people are searching, civil engineers in Arizona and, you know, things like that, the odds of you popping up are that much higher. And then just the notion of, you know, as I said earlier, following other organizations, competitors, companies, trades, whatever it might be. It's amazing how impactful that can be, just from an education standpoint. What else is going on in the market, and how do we use that to you know, improve our focus going forward? What do we want to go after? What other projects are happening out there? So it's all good, man. Thank you.